Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 42 of our YouTube channel and podcast. I could not be more excited to continue talking with you guys about personal finance topics and things that are going to lead you to financial freedom in the long term. Today, we're going to be talking about credit cards. And you can see the title of this video, Credit Card Companies Are Lying to You. And boy, do I mean it. This is a particular debt instrument that is one of the most common in the United States, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about credit cards. And so today I'm going to go about setting the record straight and putting my 2 cents out there as to what I think about credit cards and what I think about this financial product that has been one of the most detrimental to Americans over the last 50 years. But before we get started, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button. Also, like this video, hit the thumbs up button. Leave me any reviews in the comments, any thoughts or questions that you may have. You can also leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, I appreciate you doing so. Just make sure that you subscribe and leave me a review there. Also, if you want to follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, I post a lot of good stuff there, a lot of helpful tips that can help you push forward in your financial life. And then also, if you want some financial coaching help, you can sign up for that on my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. So first and foremost, I want to leave you with my stance on credit cards. My first thought is they're not all bad. And I'll explain what I mean. There are benefits to be had. There are rewards, and there's the credit score, help that it can actually provide you. And it actually can provide benefits that are pretty nice if you can be responsible enough to use them correctly. So first of all, I do have credit cards, and I do use credit cards. I have two different types of credit cards, and they serve two different purposes for me. One is for flight miles. So I have a Southwest Airlines credit card that I get points for that I go fly for free. And then the other is for cash back. So I spend money on things and then I get cash back, and I can end up spending less money on things. And so that's always nice as well. But the primary reason that I keep them around is to maintain the FICO score. And even though the FICO is not the end all be all, being able to purchase a house or rent an apartment or things like that without any hassle can entice you to maintain your FICO score over time. But that does not mean that it is 100% necessary, and it does not mean that you all should keep credit cards just because it can help your FICO score. It can also ruin your life, and we'll talk about that too. Now, I would only keep credit cards, and I only keep credit cards as long as they are getting paid off every month to zero. No balance at the end of the month. I am accruing zero interest. They will always be paid off at the end of the month, and that's in perpetuity. I'll never miss a payment. Do not miss anything, because as soon as you miss, it's a downward spiral of missing payments and accruing interest, and that's not what we want from credit cards. That means you're moving backwards in this debt. We want you to be moving forward and just using this as an opportunity to do so, not a way to fall further and further backwards. And that kind of points me into my next thought is I would never use them if I know that they cause me issues. If I know that if I have a credit card with a credit limit of $10,000 over there, that I'm going to go and max that credit card out, that should not be part of your repertoire. Every credit card you have should be cut up and thrown away because we're not using them for the credit limit. We're not using them to buy all the things we want to buy with credit. We are using them simply for any benefits that they may give you and the particular cash back, rewards, and maintenance of your FICO score if that is necessary for you. Now, all this said, and all these good things that I just said, the good is far outweighed by the bad, because credit cards can be an absolute nightmare for people. Paying the kind of interest on debt that credit cards have is a losing proposition. 24% APRs and 18% APRs and whatever is a losing proposition. You do not want to get stuck in a place where you owe, 20% interest annually on some debt, those debts can stay around forever. You know that if you make the minimum payment on a credit card, your credit card will likely never get paid off. And that's because the minimum payment is not an amortized payment. It's not a payment where there is an end date to the debt. That is a revolving line of debt. And so you can stay in it forever if you want to. And that is so dangerous to you. And if you know that you can have these kinds of issues, then you can't let the bad happen in the first place. You can't tempt yourself with keeping credit cards around. You have to get rid of the thing that is your cancer. You have to get rid of the thing that is going to eat away at you. If you have a tumor in your body that is growing and it's cancerous and it's, something that is, negatively affecting your health, you're not just going to leave it in there because you think, maybe it won't grow very much. No, you're going to get that thing taken out and extracted. And you have to do the same thing with these financial cancers in your life. And credit cards can definitely be a financial cancer that you have to cut out. Literally, you can cut your credit card out of your life. So now that we've gotten my thoughts out of the way, let's talk about some myths about credit cards. And these are absolute myths, and I bet we've all heard them. So the first myth is that paying them off every month is what most people do. And that is an absolute lie. Most people hold a balance, which is dumb because of the interest rates. And it's dumb regardless of what the interest rate is, whether it's 3 or 24% annually. Holding a debt that you don't have to hold is dumb. And of the individuals that do hold a balance, most of them had the intention of paying off the debt monthly, but they fell into the trap and got comfortable and they hold the balance. Let me just tell you this. If most people paid off credit cards on a monthly basis and didn't hold a balance, credit card companies would be in trouble because they wouldn't make interest. And how do you think they make their money? On fees and interest. And so these credit card companies would struggle if that was the case. Let me just tell you, credit card companies are not hurting for anything. And so you need to understand that just because you think that most people do it, and just because you think that you can do it yourself, you need so much self-awareness if you're going to use credit cards, because falling into this trap is absolutely possible for you. And then another myth is that airline miles and cash back and rewards are really good reasons to keep credit cards. And I just told you that I do, right? But it's not necessarily a good reason. And here's why. Because people get blinded by the rewards. Once again, self-awareness is key here. If you can get blinded by the rewards, you will lose. If you get blinded by the fact that the more stuff that you buy, the more airline miles you get, if you get blinded by that fact, what ends up happening? You end up getting to a point where you ran your credit card debt up too high and you can't pay it off month to month. So now you're carrying a balance. Now the credit card company is making money and they're winning. And that's the thing, is that they give you these benefits, but they give you these benefits with the thought that if I give them this, nominal benefit of these airlines miles or points, or if I give them this nominal benefit of some cash back, they're going to mess it up. And they do. People do. You do. Maybe not you specifically, but people just like you mess it up every single day because they get blinded by the rewards. So you can't allow yourself to get blinded by the rewards. You have to understand that the dangers are so much worse than these good things that can be used and that I actually use myself. But you have to understand that there's danger on the other side of them if you allow yourself to be blinded by the fact that rewards that they offer don't sound too bad. And then what about the myth of I have to keep a credit card or else my FICO score is going to struggle? I mean, I got out of all these other debts and I don't have any other debts, so I just have this credit card to keep my FICO up and I have to have it. I have to do that. Credit card debt is too dangerous to keep something that you know is likely to hurt you. So let me explain. The FICO score can be a big deal in purchasing a home, and I understand that. And that's one of the biggest things that people argue over keeping debt and keeping a FICO score and keeping a good FICO score, is saying, I want to buy a house, I need to keep a good FICO score, I just need to do that. Well, that's not a bad argument, but Why would you keep something in your life that you know is hurting you? If credit card debt is hurting you, you can't just allow it to stick around because you want to have a good FICO score. I would rather have no FICO score, which is what's going to happen if you get completely out of debt. If you have no debt, you will eventually have no FICO score. And so I would rather have no FICO score and no debt than a good FICO score and have to deal with 24% interest rates on credit card debt. That just doesn't sound like a proposition that I am going to win. It sounds like that the credit card company is just winning over and over and over again in your life if that's what you're allowing them to do. And then what about the myth of, well, I can't shop online without them? Hey, debit cards? You ever heard of a debit card? They can be used for the exact same thing. Debit cards can do the exact same thing with online shopping. And guess what? That's actual money. And if you overdraft on your bank account, they're going to, charge you penalties. That is actual money coming out of your account, not some credit. So debit cards, they'll do the same trick. And then what about, well, I need a credit card to book a hotel or whatever. Well, guess what? And many of them will take debit cards just fine. Once again, debit cards, they're made by Visa too, or MasterCard too. So it just don't fall into these little stupid little myths that are going to, or have the potential to, tear your financial life apart because you feel like the good in them and the uses of them outweighs the bad of them. And what about this myth? Nobody uses cash anymore. I get that cash is far harder to come by now than it ever has been, and there's this coin shortage or whatever the heck's been going on during coronavirus. But that doesn't mean that places don't take cash. And guess what? When you pay cash, it hurts. If you have a $100 bill and you pay with that $100 bill, that hurt. Because guess what? You gave up a $100 bill and you might get change back, but that change is not going to equal $100. But if you give somebody your debit card or your credit card, what happens? They give your debit and your credit card back. And you don't feel the friction. You don't feel like anything just happened there. You just feel like, oh, I just paid for it. And so the pain of paying with cash actually is going to make you spend less money. And so places do still accept cash, and you just have to know that if it's a problem for you to carry around plastic, then maybe paying an exact change is the way you need to do it. Whatever you need to do to make sure that your financial life stays stable, absolutely do it. For a while, my wife and I, 100% on our grocery budget, we were having trouble maintaining our grocery budget correctly. And so what did we do? We said, okay, we're going to stop paying with plastic at the grocery store. We are going to pay with cash at the grocery store. We're going to take the amount of cash that we budget and not a dime more, not a penny more. And so over the course of the week, we only have X amount to spend at the grocery store. And guess what? It worked. We took cash and we never spent more than that amount of cash. Cash can win still, even in this age of electronic payments and cards. And what about this last myth? I need it for emergencies. I need it in case something happens. Well, not if you're following my plan, you don't. Before I had you pay off debt, I had you set aside a small emergency fund. And I know it is a small emergency fund, but it covers 1 month's worth of expenses for you. And so, yeah, worst case scenario, something big happens and God forbid you have to, go into debt in order to take care of that big thing. But you've already got this small emergency fund and you're going to build up a larger emergency fund after you get out of debt. And so that's not a necessity. It's not needed for emergencies. And your justification of using it for emergencies, it ends up being, oh, well, I want to order pizza tonight, and so I'm going to use my credit card to buy the pizza. Or I want to buy this online, and so I'm going to use this card to buy it online. You end up justifying things that you think are necessary in your life as emergencies and not true emergencies. When you have an emergency fund, emergencies only cost as much as the emergency itself. But if you put the emergency on a credit card, if that's your emergency fund, then your emergency is going to cost more because you're going to accrue interest likely on this emergency. And this will push you to a place where you can absolutely stay broke because you think that credit is something that is yours. Credit is not yours. Credit is the credit card company's. You can only have savings or cash, and that credit is theirs, and you can tell it's theirs because you're going to pay them the interest payments on that credit, on that debt. You just have to understand that credit limits are not equivalent to savings. It's not the same thing. If I have $10,000 in savings and something big happened and I had to pay $10,000, or I have $10,000 of a credit card limit, then of course you use the savings, because how long is it going to take you to pay off $10,000 in credit card debt? A heck of a lot longer than it's going to take to replenish a $10,000 emergency fund. So just bear that in mind and be able to understand that emergency funds need to be there for emergencies, and credit cards need to be out of your life if that's your justification for using them. And so I said something a moment ago about when you pay with a card, the friction is not there. And it's true, even with individuals who are responsible with credit cards. So like I said earlier, me and my wife actually went to cash for our grocery bill, and it worked out just fine. We're not skimping. We're still eating just fine. I'm not, frail and bony just yet. It's worked out just fine. And the reason that it worked out just fine was because before, what we were doing was we were going to the store and paying with plastic. And even though I was at that time still responsibly using credit cards, I was spending more than I wanted to, simply because there was no friction. I could buy all the snacks that I wanted to buy, and I was probably heavier then, but I could buy all the things that I was seeing in the store, and it didn't cause any friction with me. But when you start paying with cash, then things change a little bit, and you become far more aware of what you're purchasing and why you're purchasing it, and your costs go down. Now, this particular issue of spending more money doesn't necessarily mean that the credit card company is winning. It only means that the credit card company is winning if you let it get out of control and begin to hold a balance month to month, and you're not paying your credit cards off. That is when they're actually winning. Now, it may mean that you're losing because you're spending more money than you wanted to spend, but it's not necessarily meaning that they're taking advantage of you unless you are holding a balance. But they know if they'll let you fall into that habit long enough, then eventually what's likely to happen, the probabilities say, or else they wouldn't have a company that was viable and as strong as they are. They know that the probabilities say that over time you will eventually hold a balance, and they will make money on you holding a balance on your credit card. So what if you already have credit card debt? Not if you're, if you have credit cards and you're using them in a fairly responsible way or anything like that. What if you already have the debt to your name? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to employ the things that I talked about yesterday and that I talk about in the financial action plan of getting out of debt. Put your debt smallest to largest, okay, including your credit cards. They could be anywhere in there, and just smallest to largest. That's where they need to be. And then after you put everything smallest to largest, I want you to pay the minimum payment. Even if your credit card's not the smallest, pay the minimum payment on your credit cards and all your other debts. And then the smallest debt that you have, make sure that you are putting every extra dollar that you can on that smallest debt, because we shouldn't be saving and we shouldn't be investing past having a match at our employer. So we should have some extra money to throw on the smaller debts. And if we don't, we need to be doing the things necessary to get extra money in our pockets, like selling things or working extra jobs or working overtime or all the things that we talked about yesterday. But once you get to your credit cards, treat them as a debt in that particular method of paying your debt off. And once you get to it, then attack it with all of those payments and just hit it hard and get rid of it. And then once you, individual who has credit card debt, get out of credit card debt, you need to cut them up. And you may say, well, you just said I could use it responsibly if I want to. You have already proven that you can't use it responsibly. You've already proven that you can fall prey to the trap. For instance, if you were an alcoholic and you always were drinking and then you got sober, would you put yourself in situations where you could possibly fall back into drinking all the time? Or would you, keep Jack Daniels in the cabinet just in case? No. You would get rid of all the alcohol in your house. You would not go to bars. You would make the correct concessions in your own life to make sure that you don't fall into that hurtful situation again. And the same applies here. You need to get rid of your credit cards so you aren't tempted to fall back into those bad habits. Because what you want is you want to get them paid off and closed for good. And screw the FICO score. Forget about the FICO score. You are now in a place, if you get your credit cards paid off, that you're in a place of financial strength. You're in a place where I don't owe anybody any money. And that's an awesome place to be. And this is a little something extra to something I talked about earlier. I was talking about emergencies and how people keep credit cards around for emergencies. Well, if you get all your debts paid off, and then you are working on building an emergency fund, but if you get all your debts paid off, who do you owe money to? And what are you spending your money on month to month? If you had an emergency, it's highly likely that between your emergency fund and any discretionary income you had over the course of a month, you could take care of it. And that's just, unless it was something absolutely huge and ginormous, which your emergency fund should help, because once we get to that 4 to 6 months of expenses, that's a pretty big emergency fund. That's going to help you cover against most of life's issues. Then, what's the argument there? There shouldn't be one, especially once you get past building that emergency fund. You are good to go. And so if you have no credit card debt yet, or maybe you don't have credit cards yet, or you don't have credit cards at all and don't want to, awesome for you. Don't want to deter you from that feeling. But I want you to know you need to keep it that way. It's absolutely dumb to join in with pain. We want to make sure that we remain in a place of financial freedom and remain in a place of financial strength. And then just be on your guard. Understand that if you do get into using a credit card, that it's a slippery slope of spending more than you intended to spend and doing more than you intended to do, and then accidentally falling into debt and things like that. It's a slippery slope that they've run the probabilities. They know that it's likely to happen, and that's why they keep selling credit cards to anybody that they can. And just remember this last point, and I said it earlier, and I just want to hammer it home one more time. The benefits are never worth the pain. Credit card debt and the pain that comes with credit card debt is far worse than the benefits are good. Yes, there are good benefits to be had. You can use those benefits. That's awesome. But if those benefits are causing you to fall into credit card debt and pay credit card interest rates and have this revolving consistent debt hanging over your life, it is absolutely not worth it. And I would try to get rid of it as fast as possible and just get it out of my life for good. So yes, I have them. Yes, I think they can be useful. Yes, I think other people can use them for good. But once again, the bad outweighs the good of credit cards far too much. Credit card companies want you to think that the benefits are worth it. They want you to think that they're going to provide some service and some big benefit to your life that you need. These are some of the most aggressively marketed items of the 20th and 21st centuries. So you have to understand that this is something that can really hurt you. And if you allow it into your life, then you're allowing the opportunity for it to hurt you. So just be diligent, be smart, understand the disadvantages, and understand that those disadvantages are really tough to overcome. Have self-awareness. Know if you're somebody who is likely to fall into credit card debt, that you just stay away from them. It's just like if you know you have an addictive personality, you don't need to start trying to smoke cigarettes or start, dipping tobacco or whatever, these bad habits. This is no different. Bad habits can persist if you keep putting yourself in situations to where those bad habits can rear their ugly heads again. And that's no different if you're allowing yourself, somebody who doesn't have the self-discipline to deal with having a credit card, in a place where they actually have credit cards and can actually use them. So don't allow yourself in that place, and you'll be far better off in the long term. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to go down below, subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments if you haven't done so already. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review there. Also, follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and check out my website for information on financial coaching services, and that's www.mnowithdylan.com. MNO.com. And at the website, you'll find everything you need to know about the financial coaching services that I offer and everything that I am about and want to do in helping you in your financial life. So be looking out tomorrow as I talk about the interest monster, and that is payday loans and those very dangerous things that seem to lurk on every corner. So I'll be talking about that tomorrow, and I just appreciate you guys tuning in, watching these videos, and learning more about your financial life and taking the responsibility of wanting to learn and wanting to move forward. I hope that we can continue to do so, and that I can just continue to put out good content that will allow you to push forward in your financial life and grow and learn and become a better steward of the money that you're given. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.